When Nintendo revealed the pricing for its upcoming console and flagship game, the response from fans was immediate and intense. The new Switch 2 is priced at $450, Nintendo's most expensive console launch to date. But the hardware cost wasn't the only point of contention. The company also announced that Mario Kart World would be released at a price of $80, marking the highest price for a Nintendo game in over a decade. Historically, video games have maintained a consistent retail price of around $60, which was also the cost of the previous Mario Kart installment. Now, Nintendo appears to be making a strategic wager that fans will accept higher prices. Some industry experts argue that this price adjustment is long overdue, noting that video game pricing has remained stagnant, or even declined in real terms, despite rising production costs. Ultimately, video games are a business, and a lucrative one at that. So why is the $80 price tag causing such an uproar? In 2024, the gaming industry generated over $120 billion in revenue, more than 6 times the size of the global film industry. Yet despite its dominance today, gaming wasn't always a guaranteed success. In the early 1980s, the industry faced near collapse. After years of rapid growth, quality control deteriorated. Companies flooded the market with low-quality titles, many of them knockoffs of hits like Space Invaders and Pac-Man. Consumers, overwhelmed by choice and burned by poor experiences, lost confidence in the industry. The release of several disastrous games, including the infamous E.T., contributed to a massive decline, leading many to believe that video games were just a passing fad, akin to hula hoops or roller skates. That changed when Nintendo entered the US market. The company revitalized the industry with a fresh approach. To re-establish consumer trust and reignite excitement, Nintendo focused on creating a sense of wonder and value. In 1985, it launched the Famicom console in the US under the name Nintendo Entertainment System, NES, positioning it as an entertainment product rather than a toy or traditional game console. This helped distance the brand from the stigma of the previous crash. Nintendo also implemented strict quality control. It limited third-party publishers to releasing only 5 games per year, encouraging developers to focus on quality over quantity. To further rebuild trust and engagement, Nintendo launched Nintendo Power, a monthly magazine that offered news, tips, and exclusive content. The company even operated a player hotline for gaming assistance. Every NES game carried the now iconic Nintendo seal of quality, assuring customers of a minimum standard of excellence. Through these efforts, Nintendo not only salvaged the gaming industry, it set new standards that continue to influence the market today. This seal of approval became Nintendo's way of signaling to consumers that any game bearing it had been thoroughly vetted and met the company's quality standards. However, in the 1980s, some determined developers attempted to bypass Nintendo's licensing system using creative, though often controversial, methods to circumvent copyright protection. As part of its commitment to quality assurance, Nintendo focused heavily on developing its own software and intellectual properties in-house. In 1985, Nintendo released Super Mario Bros., introducing a character who would become one of the most iconic figures in entertainment history. Over time, Nintendo's library of characters and franchises expanded, but Mario remained the centerpiece, arguably as globally recognizable as Mickey Mouse. Nintendo also found massive success with franchises like Pokémon, which it co-owns, and The Legend of Zelda. With a focus on well-crafted games and memorable characters, Nintendo cultivated a devoted and passionate fan base. Today, that fan base continues to thrive. Enthusiasts proudly display their collections and pay homage to the brand in unique ways. One fan described their entertainment setup as a series of video game shadow boxes, curated to represent each generation of Nintendo consoles. Among their most prized possessions is a signed copy of Super Mario 64, autographed by Charles Martinet, the original voice of Mario, a treasured item they'd save first in case of a fire. Kennedy, known online as Nintendo Who, owns a vast and meticulously curated Nintendo collection. A lifelong fan, his passion was sparked in childhood. In the 1990s, his mother worked as a babysitter, and Kennedy often tagged along. One of the families she worked for had a Nintendo 64 with a single game, Donkey Kong 64. At just 7 or 8 years old, Kennedy would play the first hour of the game every visit, resetting the file each time, creating what he describes as a core memory. His collection includes rare and unusual consoles, such as the Virtual Boy, Nintendo's short-lived 3D system. Despite its commercial failure, collectors like Kennedy treasure it. In fact, a single cartridge from the system's limited North American library can now fetch up to $150. But Nintendo wasn't the only company leveraging beloved characters to build loyalty. In 1991, Sega introduced Sonic the Hedgehog as the face of its Sega Genesis console. Like Nintendo, Sega recognized the power of a charismatic mascot, but opted for a different approach. Its branding and hardware catered to a slightly older, more action-oriented audience. The Genesis offered more intense gameplay experiences, and Sega positioned itself as a bold alternative to Nintendo's family-friendly image. Sega's strategy paid off, at least temporarily. The launch of the Genesis ignited the first true console war, as the two companies vied for dominance in the US. For Sega, every Nintendo console sold represented a missed opportunity for their own game sales. Through aggressive marketing and edgy branding, Sega's US market share surged from just 6% in 1989 to an impressive 65% by 1992. But while Sega targeted older kids and teens, often placing risky bets on bleeding-edge hardware, Nintendo stayed the course with a more measured strategy, focused on family-friendly titles, dependable innovation, and consistent quality. By 1995, that approach had paid off. Nintendo regained its dominance while Sega faltered under the weight of its own ambition. In a crowded market, there was only room for one top player, and Nintendo had won. Eventually, hardware differences became marginal. For many players, it wasn't about processing power anymore. It was about trust, familiarity, and the games themselves. Aside from Sonic and a few lesser-known titles, Sega's library never quite rivaled Nintendo's deep bench of beloved IP. And what helped Nintendo defeat Sega decades ago is still one of the company's greatest competitive advantages today. Every part of Nintendo's business, from hardware to advertising, was focused on delivering a top-tier gaming experience. As Kit Ellis and Krista Yang, former members of Nintendo of America's public relations team, explain, marketing was less about hype and more about honoring the work, highlighting the creativity and joy behind the games. Despite being a global giant, Nintendo has always operated more like a close-knit company compared to entertainment behemoths like Sony or Microsoft. Within the industry, they embraced a unique philosophy. Instead of competing head-on in what they called the Red Ocean, where rivals fight over the same turf, they created a Blue Ocean strategy, carving out their own uncontested market space. Nintendo leaned into its distinct identity, colorful, imaginative, and family-focused. Where Xbox became known for gritty shooters and racing games, and PlayStation leaned into cinematic narratives and mature themes, Nintendo stuck with whimsy, nostalgia, and accessibility. 15 years later, everyone else has their own version of Mario, but Nintendo already perfected it from the start. And that exclusivity has remained a cornerstone of Nintendo's success. Franchises like Zelda, Pokémon, and Mario continued to thrive, but you could only play them on a Nintendo system. Unlike other publishers, Nintendo doesn't license its biggest titles to other consoles. There's no Mario Kart on Xbox, no Smash Bros. On PlayStation, and that's intentional. This walled garden has also allowed Nintendo to maintain its pricing power. Titles like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, despite being nearly a decade old, still sell at full price on Nintendo's own store. Even pre-owned, the game hovers around $50. The company rarely discounts its games, reinforcing their brand as a premium product. Internally, Nintendo has always been vigilant about protecting that perception of value. The team often discussed how to avoid devaluing their offerings, whether through literal price drops or any messaging that might cause consumers to see their games as anything less than special. That premium mindset resonated with many lifelong fans. That lack of exclusivity on other platforms often translates into deep discounts. Take God of War, once a top-selling PlayStation 4 exclusive. It launched at the standard $60 in 2018, but has since dropped as low as $20 on Steam. Gamers have come to expect these discounts, often within just months of release. But with Nintendo, the pricing story is entirely different. Their games rarely go on sale and tend to hold their value for years. That kind of consistency makes fans eager to purchase new releases on day one, whether by pre-ordering or standing in line, because they know waiting won't save them much money. So why is Nintendo the only major company that manages to preserve premium pricing? It comes down to the strength of their portfolio. Franchises like Pokémon, Mario, and Zelda are more than just popular. They're iconic. Nintendo has positioned them at the top of the food chain in gaming experiences. And because these titles are carefully curated and released with precision, Nintendo never feels pressured to compete on price. It's a strategy that draws apt comparisons to Apple. The iPhone isn't prohibitively expensive, but it costs more than many competitors. Still, millions of consumers pay the premium because they believe the added value is real and clearly communicated. With Nintendo, the logic is the same. Fans believe they're getting something uniquely special. This strategy extends beyond software. Nintendo's newest console, the Switch 2, is their most expensive yet at $450. And yet, it still undercuts the price of many competing systems. That's part of Nintendo's long-standing approach. Deliver a slightly more affordable product that doesn't sacrifice charm or experience. It's a model that worked brilliantly with the Wii. Launched at just $250 and bundled with Wii Sports, it cost half as much as the PlayStation 3 at launch. But the Wii didn't feel cheap. It offered a fresh and joyful way to play. It wasn't about gritty realism or cutting-edge graphics, it was about fun. As one gamer recalled, you could play a game of tennis on your lunch break, no suit required. In contrast to the more serious vibe of Xbox and PlayStation, Nintendo invited everyone in. From kids to grandparents, it was accessible and inclusive. Cheaper hardware, with universal appeal, has allowed Nintendo to capture a broader audience. And that audience is largely there for Nintendo's own games. The data backs this up. Between 2018 and 2023, nearly 80% of Nintendo's total software revenue came from first-party titles. That means 4 out of every $5 spent on Nintendo games went to titles made by Nintendo itself. Even Hiroshi Yamauchi, the legendary former president of the company, once said, "Sony is where hardware leads and software follows. Nintendo is the opposite." Nintendo fans recently gathered at a Switch meetup where discussions centered around the anticipated release of the Switch 2 console and its new pricing structure. Reactions were mixed, especially regarding the rising cost of games. Many attendees expressed concern over the possibility of $80 becoming the standard price for new titles. For context, $60 was already a significant price point for many gamers, and the jump to $80 has sparked widespread debate. With the current economic climate affecting many families, the higher cost presents a real financial burden. During a live stream hosted by members of the Switch and Play community, the reality of the new prices became clear. One member expressed surprise upon discovering that the new Mario Kart game could cost as much as $88. The shock was shared among others, particularly given the potential $400 to $500 price tag for the console itself. Although some fans found a small sense of relief in bundle deals, such as the Switch 2 and Mario Kart World bundle priced at $500, effectively lowering the game price to around $50, this did little to satisfy growing concerns. Even discounted digital versions weren't enough to ease frustration, especially when considering the historical context of past Nintendo launches. The release strategy for the Switch 2 drew comparisons to past consoles. For instance, when the Wii launched, it came bundled with Wii Sports, a game that became a cultural phenomenon and was free with the system. This strategy helped justify the purchase and made the Wii more accessible. Former Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé even publicly noted his efforts to ensure Wii Sports remained a pack-in title. Now with the Switch 2, some fans feel that this model of accessibility is being abandoned. This isn't the first time Nintendo has faced backlash for pricing decisions. In 2011, the company launched the 3DS at $250, only to reduce the price by $80 5 months later due to poor sales and a lack of compelling launch titles. The gaming industry has seen similar missteps, such as with Sony's PlayStation 3. Launching at a high price without sufficient justification can significantly hinder success. One explanation for the price hike is the increased cost of manufacturing and economic uncertainty. Tariffs, particularly those introduced under the Trump administration, led to fears of additional cost increases for electronics produced in China and shipped to the US. Although Nintendo denied that tariffs influenced the pricing of the Switch 2, speculation continues. Regardless, the market reality is that developing and shipping gaming consoles has become more expensive. Despite the shock surrounding $80 games, historical data suggests prices may not be as unreasonable as they first appear. Adjusted for inflation, many older titles were significantly more expensive. For example, Super Mario 64 was priced at $60 in 1997, which would be about $119 today. Since 2020, game prices have inched upward to around $70, which is approximately $86 in today's value. A broader look at the price of top-selling Nintendo titles over the decades shows that, when adjusted for inflation, games have actually become more affordable. This context helps explain why industry insiders believe that $80 may soon become the new standard. One former PlayStation executive noted that Nintendo may simply be initiating a necessary change for the entire industry. Game development costs have skyrocketed. Call of Duty titles, for instance, once cost $45 million to develop, but now approach $700 million. The upcoming Grand Theft Auto 6 is rumored to have a $2 billion development budget, making it more expensive than the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. As production costs increase while retail prices stagnate, companies must either sell more units or raise prices to stay profitable. The move toward higher pricing is already influencing others. Shortly after Nintendo revealed its pricing, Microsoft also announced that future first-party titles would carry the same $80 price tag. Still, no matter how logical these decisions may be from a business standpoint, consumer perception is critical. Economic sentiment in the US has been declining throughout 2025, with many people feeling their purchasing power is shrinking. Understandably, this makes the Switch 2's pricing feel excessive, even if some believe the value is justified. From a value perspective, $80 for a game that offers 40 to 60 hours of entertainment can be seen as a good deal, especially when compared to other entertainment options. A common metric among gamers is the $1 per hour rule. Nintendo titles, known for their depth and replayability, often provide a lasting experience that extends beyond the first playthrough. Fans frequently return to classic Nintendo games from past consoles like the Nintendo 64 or DS, drawn by both nostalgia and quality. However, this relies heavily on Nintendo maintaining its high standards. Recent disappointments such as Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, plagued by bugs and performance issues, have left some fans wary. Still, Nintendo's cultural impact remains strong. Through movies, theme parks, and generations of loyal players, the company has managed to maintain a powerful connection with its fan base. It's now socially acceptable, even celebrated, for adults to remain passionate about gaming in 2025, a cultural shift that Nintendo has successfully embraced in its marketing. Despite concerns, early indicators show strong demand for the Switch 2. Pre-orders sold out within hours, and forecasts suggest up to 50 million units could be sold within the first year. The console's success will likely hinge on its software lineup beyond 2025.